Not about 9:15? You know what? They put some, there's an LED bulb in there or something. And it's for Bob for the shining light. He must be going to give a big oration. Let's go. 9:15 is good enough. Did it for 7 years, and
We have a new staff person down there.
Good morning. We will call to order the January 21st, 2014 meeting of the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners. I'd like to start off with the invocation, which will be presented by Commissioner Wesley Davis, the Vice Chair, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Bob Slaughter. Would everyone please rise and join us?
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity we come before you today, conduct the public's business, and may we use your guidance, your knowledge, and wisdom in the decisions that we make to enhance our community. In your heavenly name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. We, under additions, deletions to the agenda, we had a request to pull item 13A. Gentlemen, are there any other changes to the agenda?
Move the agenda as amended.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a request to add a item either under My Matters or which would be fine, dealing with the City of Vero Beach Electric. Some important initiatives I think we need to put into place before our next meeting that we need to take care of a few items. So I can either add that under my commissioner items or any other place that you...
Why don't we go ahead and add them under your items, Commissioner? So we'll add the 14E1.
I'll amend my motion to add the electric item under Commissioner Zork's matters.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Slaughter, second from Commissioner Davis to accept the agenda as amended. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Next, under proclamations and presentations, is a presentation by Ellen Gower on behalf of American Coalition for Property Rights on upcoming informational meetings. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for letting me come before you.
Absolutely.
I'm here today to announce to the people of Indian River County that if they like their little town, their big town, their Indian River County, their rural area, they might be interested in knowing that this Saturday, January 25th, at 10 o'clock in the morning at the Sebastian North County Library, there will be an informational forum held to let people know exactly what may happen if 750 becomes part of our community. We want people to know that we like having our elected officials be our deciders, and we'd like them to understand that that may be in jeopardy, and we hope that we will garner a large number at our meeting on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock at the North County Library. Thank you so much.
Ms. Gower, just before, if you could give us your address for the record,
I beg your
please.
pardon?
Your address for the record. I should have asked that up front.
My
apologies.
address is 7435 Cypress Bend Manor, Vero Beach, 32966.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll.
Anything?
I
Commissioner
have
Zork?
actually a question for the county attorney on this. I saw the invitation for this, and I see that one of the fellow commissioners is going to be there. Can another commissioner just attend and be in the audience, not be part of the panel discussion?
Absolutely. As long as the two commissioners aren't communicating with each other at the meeting, there's certainly nothing that stops you from attending a meeting and listening.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Is that good, gentlemen? Thank you. Next is a presentation of an update on the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy Committee by Glenn Herron, District 5 Representative. Good morning and welcome, Mr. Herron.
Good morning. Thank you. Glenn Herron. I live at 1964 Gray Falcon Circle, Southwest. And in Indian River County. I just wanted to make a rather informal presentation about my experience on SEDS. This is a committee that you guys appointed me to about a year ago, and so I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what I've been doing on that committee. First, for the public, what is SEDS? Well, SEDS is basically a subcommittee of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and there are tons of these committees, SEDS committees around the country. What makes it up? Well, it's made up of representatives from Indian River County, St. Lucie County, Martin, and Palm Beach County, about 4 members each. And on Indian River County, if you haven't changed the representatives, it's Randy Riley, Mark Mathis, myself, and Helene Castletine are the 4 from Indian River County.
I believe, Commissioner Flesher, you had appointed Rich Stringer as your representative, so that would be the 5.
Yes, he will
So
be
there's
there. Yes,
5 now. Okay,
decided
all right.
to continue on.
So thank you for that update. There's obviously a couple of people from other communities like St. Lucie County that have not yet appointed their representatives for this year. So what is SEDS? Well, the first thing I asked for was a financial report from Greg Bidet, who's the executive director of SEDS, and he gave me this one-page sheet. I don't know if anybody can. It doesn't have a title on it. It just says.
Would you put it on the overhead?
Oh. Well, it doesn't have a title on it, but it just says source of funds. And the total revenues for, if this really is SEDS, as opposed to the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, $2.7 million is the funding sources for SEDS.
For a subcommittee?
Apparently. This is what, page 18 of some report that he gave me.
Well funded.
So, it's either SEDS or it's the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. But what's interesting...
sounds like the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. That $2.7 million is also coincidentally roughly the annual revenues for the council.
That's, yeah, as I have no title on the page, it's hard for me to tell. But what's interesting to note is that of the $2.7 million, $1.1 million comes from the federal government, federal contract funds. So, and my understanding from Greg Bidet is that we're funded by the EDA, the Economic, the Economic Development Administration in Washington, D.C. So, back to what it is we do. We're funded largely by the federal government, and to this day, I'm still not entirely certain what it is we do with those funds, but I can tell you that in the presentations that have been made, we appear to be giving our funds out to various projects in the 4 different counties, and we as counties, we seem to compete for these projects. And in Indian River County, it looks like some of the funds went to Fellsmere. Not that that's a bad thing, but that's where it appears in the time that I've been on the committee where it's gone.
Okay, just as an update, this is not SEDS. This is the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council.
Cool.
Under the local contributions, those are the dues we pay. So you may have asked for the information for SEDS, but you didn't get it.
Oh, sorry, yeah, you're up on the screen. Yeah, there's the 1.1
Okay,
million
just so
federal
I
funds.
follow you. Just what you're calling a contribution is what we're calling basically payment to the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and this is for the...
Yeah, I think that's your $60,000. Is that
Roughly.
correct?
Yeah. 58,000. Okay.
Yeah, but the big number is the federal fund side. That's what I thought interesting. So my understanding of SEDS is we get these federal funds and we decide, and perhaps that's Treasure Coast Regional Planning Committee as well, but we get these funds and we decide which projects get them. So it's kind of like a trough, if you will. So what do? Well, when I go to these committees or if I attend by phone, we get these presentations, and they're pretty professionally done. And one of the ones that we concentrated on last year was, again, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy for 2012-2017. We talked a lot about 750. In fact, on this one 12-page presentation, 4 pages were dedicated to it. Tie-in to 750. Tie-in to 750. SEDS plan to inform 750 with respect to potential projects, programs, and activities. So it's a lot about 750. In any case, what I find about this committee is it's heavily staff-driven. I go to these things, we put on this presentation, and at the end of the day, if there's a vote, it's almost entirely unanimous. but it's very staff-driven. So on January 9th of this month, I was at this meeting. Actually, I was on by teleconference, and this was probably the most interesting meeting I'd been to. We were talking about new members, and from the 4 different communities, and who was appointed, and they set up their new members. Some communities still had yet to put their members on, but that was coming in the next month. And then the next part of the discussion was, again, 750, and what a great program 750 is, and that there was a summit coming up. And so they handed out this rather nice presentation about the summit, or rather, this nice little sheet. If you can see that, it says 750 Summit, a time to lead. That was the nature of the discussion for the 9th. So anyways, at the end of the meeting, I asked the question, okay, so we've got all these members that are appointed by their county commissioners. And they said, yes, that all the members are appointed by their various county commissioners. I said, okay, that's great. And then I said, well, are you aware that Indian River County, Martin County, and St. Lucie County have pulled out of 750, since that's the major focus of our committee? It was absolute dead silence. I mean, we are your representatives on this committee, and either they weren't aware or ignored it. So the next conversation was Greg Viday and another gal that must have been on the committee talking about, well, 750 is a great program, and we really should go to the summit, and this is great information. And I'm like, but hang on a sec. We are your representatives. You guys are the elected officials, and you have said you're leaving 750. St. Lucie County said it. Martin County said it. But this bureaucracy ignored all of it. Pretends like that's not and this is my perspective. Your position is not important to this bureaucracy. They will continue on regardless of what you say. And we have represented you to be our voice. And if we don't like what you say, we'll vote you out of office. But I'm just an unelected bureaucrat on this. That's all I am. That's all this bureaucracy is. And it's operating independent of you. That was the meaning of the January 9th meeting. And so here we are. As far as I can tell, we're just this independent bureaucracy taking money from the federal government. And we as members of this community have to fight like cats and dogs to decide who gets that money. Whereas what it should be, and again, this is my opinion, if the federal government is going to use the coercive arm of its state to take money out of our pockets as taxpayers, send it up to the federal government, and then it goes to the SEDS or the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Committee to decide who gets the money, I'd rather just see them make a block grant to either you guys or the state of Florida and let the elected officials decide. Because to this day, I still can't figure out how this funding is going. I mean, it's just an independent bureaucracy. So with that, I just wanted to tell you my experience, and if you have any comments, I'm welcome.
On the January 15th meeting, did you attend that one?
No. There's absolutely no way I'm going to attend 750 because, at a minimum, this SEDS committee should represent your interests, the elected officials. And so you guys are voted to get out of 750. There's no way I'm going to support 750 from that position in SEDS. But like I said, Tim, they don't care. This bureaucracy is continuing on.
It's almost as if they forgot that we're out.
Commissioner Slaughter?
Glenn, the first thing I'd like to do is thank you for your service. I understand that sometimes these committees are difficult to attend and difficult to go through, especially when they seem to be going in a wildly different direction than you might have expected. So I thank you, and I thank you for persevering. I'm with you that the unelected bureaucracies like this are a great danger to our representative democracy. They undermine it on a daily basis. And that, to me, is one of the great problems of 750. And I'm also concurring with you, not just as SEDS, a very staff-driven bureaucracy, but so is the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, which I do attend regularly. The 750 presentation on January 15th, I did attend that. That was that was driven by two things, apparently. Staff and all the special interests that were also at the trough that day. So I thank you for your service. I think that your message to us as your elected representative is a good one. We need to talk to our representatives on SEDS and just at least educate them some the way we've been educated by our public and let them know about what's going on and the dangers of this. I was at the last Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council meeting, and the programs now putting into place is just, again, my perspective, you use that phrase, it's a good phrase, my perspective is that they're basically designed to change the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council into a lobbying organization to further undermine our representative democracy. And I find that to be an incredibly great danger. And I think that this commission has awoken to that fact, but we need to remain vigilant because they're not going to go away. And just one example, the unelected bureaucracy is that when this board said that we would like to request the 750, the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council to consider changing the name of the 750, before any discussion before the council, their staff said, we're not going to change the name. Again, another indicia of staff-driven, without any concern for what the council says. But I think that's because they've never had concern for the council, and they've been driving that bus for so long that they don't see that as an impediment to their goals and objectives. So again, thank you very much.
Commissioner Fleischer, go ahead.
Yes, and I just wanted to echo what Commissioner Solari just said, but in addition, when we asked to remove ourselves and change the name as this board and as a 4-to-1 vote requested that change, you know what the response was. There are still 2 municipalities in this county, so that means you're in.
But Joe, I mean,
that is arrogant.
But you're the ones, you've appointed these people to SEDS. I mean, these are your appointments, not from the city or it's from the county commission. And it was dead silence when I asked them if they understood that you had pulled out of the 750. Dead silence.
Well, you have to admire them for...
Joe, what you said wasn't important. What you had to say was not important to these guys.
Yes. Yes, and it's rather insultuous to think that we could just ignore what your electorate has said, and you're part of the group. We want out. No, you're part of the group. And it's very unsettling to think that did not Martin County opt out? But they said, no, they didn't really opt out. They're committed to the plan right now, but at the end of the year, so we have to count them in too. You have nearly 50% of the involvement to say we want out, and they're ignoring.
Yeah,
it's just like a bad sitcom episode. And in addition, you're a certified public accountant, are you not?
Correct.
What do you take of what you were given when you were asked what our budget was?
Well, the fact that there was no heading was a bit...
Throw a little bit of analysis into that for me.
Yeah, well, the fact that there was no heading was a bit disconcerting, and but the fact that it was federally funded, that we're largely federally funded, that undermines your authority as an elected official.
So question asked, question unanswered, now go away.
Yeah. I mean, conservatives have been warning the country about this kind of stuff for since our founding, and this was, an eye-opening experience for me to see it actually in process. That's what I found fascinating about you can think of it ideologically, but to actually see it in action was another eye-opener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Glenn, it's just so everybody gets the full picture on the federal spending. Regional Planning Council applies for different federal grants, and as you showed there, it's for contract work. So it's an actual project. There's a contract to perform a certain amount of work. Just like we get state grants all the time, we get federal grants, Regional Planning Council gets federal grants. This board voted unanimously to hire the Regional Planning Council to do a Homeland Security training exercise with federal grant money. Okay? So we can sit here and say, oh, this is evil bureaucracy, but you know what? It was a 5-0 vote to request the Regional Planning Council to provide that Homeland Security training utilizing federal funds. Okay? The other thing Regional Planning Council did, they did apply for and got a EPA, federal funds, brownfield assessment grant to have funds available to do the initial assessment on potential brownfield sites. On a motion by Commissioner Slaughter on December 3rd, this board voted 5-0 to ask the Regional Planning Council to utilize $72,000 federal dollars to perform a brownfield assessment at the Gifford landfill. Okay? So it's not bureaucrats making that decision. Those were votes by this county commission asking the Regional Planning Council to expend federal funds for various community-based projects. Okay? The other thing is, to Commissioner Slaughter's point that the Regional Planning Council is now going to become a lobbying, I will take either, you call it full credit or full blame for that initiative, but when every council member, a very big concern of every county and municipality in Palm Beach, Martin, St. Lucie, and Indian River County is the upcoming All Aboard Florida train project and the potential cost to these local communities to do the improvements to make quiet zones. That is a big issue to all 4 counties in the region. If we can unite and go to our state legislators and say, hey, this is a big inconvenience, it's a big detriment to our communities, and it might be more appropriate if there is some funding available to help these local communities put in the improvements to make quiet zones, then as a region, coming before our state legislators with 2 million voices instead of just, Little Vero Beach with 15,000 people saying, hey, we need help. If we come together as a region with 2 million voices, we may be able to get some relief on the quiet zones when All Aboard Florida comes across. So I have no problem joining with my fellow commissioners from the other counties, joining with the other elected officials from municipalities, and coming together saying, you know what, in our region, we need some help with these quiet zones. So you can call that bureaucracy, you can call it what you want. I call it trying to help my community deal with an issue that's being forced upon us and we have no other say. So call it a bureaucracy if you want. I'm thinking I'm trying to take care of my community, my constituents, to protect them from an impact that we have no voice over. So that's just kind of
Mr. Chairman, we have a choice, and when you echo a commissioner's motion and a vote, a unanimous vote of 5-0, what you're then echoing is that we have a voice, and we are the elected officials, and we are in representative government, and we are representing the people, and we are making choices that it's their wish. And we are supporting what the needs of the community are. When we're looking at this unelected force where our community does not even know the names of the individuals that are earmarking the funding and making these suggestions that, well, you make it sound nice that we're talking about the softening of the stops for the railway. They don't even want the railway. So now we are forced in a position where we have to soften up the emotions of our community and have an emotionless statement being made at the 750 Planning Council Alliance. Call it what you may. It's a name of individuals that our people don't know. And these are the people that trust us to make those decisions. You could point out that we've made 5-0 decisions in housing. They were the right moves. And we had open, lively debate before this commission. We've had the public give us our input. We've had workshops. We've had additional discussion. And we've made a vote for the betterment of our community, as opposed to the Treasure Coast Regional Planning saying this is going to be good for all. And I think that's the major concern. And so when you point out 5-0 votes, I think we've done a great job. But not each one of their suggestions have come into a 5-0 vote. And I don't think they ever will. And I think that's what we need to do, is have home rule on what we're doing with our community, for our community, by the people who chose us to make those decisions. They can approach us, they can discuss with what's happening, they can give us their input. When we, again, this is the people's forum. It's not down south. And it's not going to be dragged up into an opinionated concept where we have individuals who are looking for additional funding from the federal government and the back doors. And obviously, when Mr. Herron says that he didn't get the right information and he was just ushered along, well, that's what we've been getting all along, too. And that's why I find no interest in being down there to begin with, only if forced or necessary.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Commissioner Solari?
I'd like to take two responses to your comments. One, the idea that we shouldn't ask the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council for funds that are due us just because we disagree with one of their issues. I find that a ridiculous position that you have and maintain and have voiced a number of times. We pay $58,000 in dues annually to there. We also pay substantial taxes to the state and federal governments, and I believe that we ought to get some of that back if we're following the procedures of the different groups, and it can benefit our citizens. That's why I worked with Mr. Verday to try to get the grant for the old Gifford landfill. Just because I disagree on one fundamental issue with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council doesn't mean I won't work with them on a lot of other issues. I do that every day there. I do that every day here. You and I have disagreed on a lot of fundamental issues over the last 5 years, but you know that on many, many other issues, I've worked hard with you to do the best for the citizens of Vero Beach, and I'll continue to do that. The second item, you talked about other elected officials and joining other elected officials in lobbying. Yes, I think that's fine, and it's the elected officials that ought to do that. But at that Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council meeting on Friday, there was a new committee appointed, the Governor's Committee. The Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council has, I believe, 5 appointees by the governor, and you recommended that they set up another committee specifically to lobby the governor. And I believe that one of those governor appointees has been there for over 25 years. I find that to be part of the problem. And the fact that those government officials, the government appointees aren't elected are part of the problem. You remember at the joint meeting when one of our constituents couldn't talk under the public hearing, it was Mr. Wallace, who was not an elected official, who shut her down. Shut her down, even though she'd waited patiently for 4 hours to speak for her 3 minutes. So I find this to be an incredible danger. And I believe that, yes, we should work with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council or the state government or other commissioners when it's appropriate, but that doesn't mean we should be silent when it's not appropriate. Thank you.
And, Commissioner, I agree with you 100% on your first point. I do think we should utilize the Regional Planning Council and their resources and funds, but maybe I misinterpreted Mr. Herron's presentation, but I got the impression he was opposed to the fact that they had $1.1 million in federal funds. And I was just pointing out to him that as a commission, we have utilized some of those federal funds. So that was my only point. Now, maybe I misinterpreted your comments, but what I got from it was that you didn't like the idea that there was over $1 million in the Regional Planning Council budget.
Yeah, I don't like the idea that we've got a bureaucracy that is not responding to you guys, your wishes and direction, and that it's largely funded by the federal government, and that bureaucracy is operating independent of you. That's really what I object to. In terms of federal funds, yeah, Commissioner, I agree with you. We're not going to be getting rid of federal programs anytime soon. But that doesn't mean we just go willy-nilly down the path and say this is a great thing to do. We're going to continue to accept federal funds. I mean, if you can put that sheet up, this was a part of a presentation made by SEDS, and it talks about a number of different programs that SEDS was obviously involved with. And look at the numbers. I mean, who decided which of these projects should get federal funds? I I mean, these are my tax dollars. Everybody in the room here pays, when we pay our 1040s, that money's going to the federal government, and who decides who gets this money? I'd much rather, I'm being ideological here, I agree. I'd much rather see the federal funds come back either to the state or to the county, and you guys get to decide. Not some bureaucrats. I can tell you, I didn't have any input as a SEDS member on this list of projects. I don't know if you guys did, but I didn't. And I'm assuming it's just the bureaucracy. It's the staff that's deciding who gets their share of federal funds. I mean, Fellsmere got $700,000 out of this deal. Some of these other projects were $300 million. Why should we have to fight like cats and dogs to get our own money back? That's what these bureaucracies are doing. They're taking the power away from you. That's my objection, Peter.
Yeah, and Glenn, I can tell you, like the city of Fellsmere, they applied for those funds. Okay, that was a decision by the local government that we want to go after a grant, and Regional Planning Council said, yeah, we can help you get it. Okay, I mean, that was the local government making that out. Probably all these are local governments making the decision. This is a project of interest, and the Regional Planning Council say, okay, well, here's how we can help you achieve it.
So, again, I'm asking the question, what's the need for the bureaucracy?
To help, they have the expertise to walk, just like the Brownfield grant, okay? Regional planning staff applied for that. They've got a grant, and then now it's available to the local governments. No one's forcing us to apply to them for the Brownfield assessment, but the funds were there, available to the local governments to make a local decision. Okay, yeah, we want to tap into that because we have a project, a local project, that we think this will benefit from.
Right, and you have no problem with the fact that other money is going in disproportionate amounts to different counties.
Well, the dues are proportionate. It's based on a population, and I think for Fellsmere to get $700,000, I think that's a pretty good chunk for them.
Good deal for Fellsmere. I don't know how the city of Vero Beach would feel about that, or Indian River County would feel about that, but $300 million for some other project, and St. Lucy's getting $3.6 million.
And curiously, Fellsmere is one of the two communities that stayed in 750.
That is
no connection.
God Almighty.
Anyway,
the two. All right.
I don't want to belabor the point, but these are dangerous things, Peter. I mean, bureaucracies are dangerous things. I mean, the classic example of a dangerous bureaucracy is the FMPA. Look, if the 750 movement was in place 30 years ago, we probably wouldn't be dealing with the FMPA. You wait till you see the fight we're going to have to deal with them. If FP&L can't afford this deal, this is the very thing we're fighting. Bureaucracies run by unelected officials instead of you guys.
Glenn, is there a page 2 to this Vital Projects Action Plan Matrix?
Tim, I got to tell you, this 2012-2017 report was 84 pages that was put out in a 1-hour presentation. So, I'm just catching snippets of this kind of stuff, and Tim, it's just staff-driven. We don't really have any input on this deal. It's the staff puts these presentations up, and then if there's a vote, it's I move staff recommendation. It's unanimous.
Do you know what their total vital projects budget is?
Not a clue.
I mean, could you see about 400 million or 300 plus million?
Some big numbers on there, yeah.
With 90% of the money going to one spot.
Yeah.
For one project.
It's just one of the snippets I picked up out of this thing, Tim. Yeah. So.
I'm sure Bob's read it thoroughly.
This one I haven't.
Is there anything that you saw that had the title Indian River County on the lead organization? I don't recall making any decisions on any of these.
Mostly it was Fellsmere is what I heard we would get, but most of the money was going south. Like there was some discussion on the Fort Pierce's port got some money, and so anyways.
Again, thank you very much for your service.
Taking your time.
Thank you, Glenn. Next on approval of minutes is the regular meeting of December 10th, 2014.
Move approval.
Motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Under informational items, we do have just some committee vacancies, if everyone could take a look at that. Let the public know we do have some committee availabilities if they would like to apply and serve on a committee. Going to consent agenda. Gentlemen, anything on consent?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to pull D, please.
Okay. Item D is pulled. Anything else?
Just so you can...
Approve as amended?
Okay. Okay. Is there anyone from the public that would like to have a consent agenda item pulled for further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, we have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Davis, to approve as amended. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? That carries unanimously. Commissioner Solari, item D, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just pulled this so I can vote against it, but if Commissioner Davis wants to hear my limited government speech again, I'd be happy to.
Move approval?
I'll second that just based on the fact that I think it's your same position on defense, that you ought to either rebuild it or tear it down, right?
I'm sorry, I couldn't catch that one. I just couldn't hear you.
No, that's okay. Mama always said.
Life is like a box of chocolates.
Some of them should have stayed in the wrapper.
Will melt in the car.
Okay, so we do have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Solari opposed. Takes us to public items. There are no public hearings. Under public discussion items, we have a request to speak from Althea McKenzie regarding an update of the Gifford Neighborhood Plan. Good morning, Althea. Welcome.
Wow, she has a lot of papers with her. Do you need to use the overhead for any of those that you have? You might want to change podiums if you do, since they look like maybe some illustrations maybe.
Good morning, and thank you. I will use overhead, and I will also provide copies for you, gentlemen.
While you're setting up, Joe, can you see if Scott can come down and help back again? I think he went back upstairs, but to help with the overhead in case she needs it.
Thank you.
Or Jason.
Or Jason.
They need one in there.
Help is on the way.
Can I see it? Can I see it first? What the hell is that? I'll get you when we're done.
The purpose of my request to speak today, my name is Althea McKenzie. I live at 2405 16th Avenue. Just want to start with a little housekeeping because apparently every time I speak there seems to be a question as to my tenure here in the county. I've been a resident in this county since 2004. I've been involved in this county whether as a poll official or working in different capacities. When there was a double count on the 2008 primary election, I was a person who notified the Supervisor of Elections office of their discrepancies. I've served currently on several boards within Gifford, and each year I run an annual award ceremony that recognizes 500 students of minority and multicultural backgrounds that have either made the honor roll or citizenship. I am also going to disclose today that I am a candidate for County Commission, and I'm seeking District 2, and so I think the public should know that based on my presentations. So today's request is on April 16th of last year, the County Commission was kind enough to take a look at the old Gifford Neighborhood Plan that was designed back in 2002. And the request was brought by a meeting and several discussions with Commissioner Davis. And there was a unanimous vote by the board, 5-0, that it should be explored and taken a look at and revisited. At the time that the request was made, Gifford had a incident that made quite a bit of local or regional news regarding shootings and things like that, and those things have been since settled. In May 21st, Mr. Keating did a presentation to kind of give us a report card on where Gifford was as far as the Gifford neighborhood plan and what needed to be done, what was done, and what was complete. And his report at the time, according to that, was that, I'm sorry, I stand corrected, it was done on May 15th, was that 82% of the plan was complete. I missed you gentlemen yesterday. We had an MLK parade. If anybody walks through Gifford, I can tell you 82% of what's needed for Gifford is not complete.
I didn't see you at the parade.
And I didn't see you either, County Commissioner, but I did speak. You must have left early. I was located on 43rd and 45th Avenue and made my presentation on there. So you must have left, sir. Sorry we missed each other. Mr. Solari usually joins us every year. His condolences for not being with us was extended by our MC, and I believe Wolford Hart and Denny Hart noted that you weren't available, but you've been there every year for us. Back to the neighborhood plan and presentation that Robert Keating made on May 15th. One of the things that was attached to that particular presentation was a report dated August 8th, 2000, to the Board of County Commissioners from the Indian River Chamber of Commerce. What happened was back in 1999, I guess, there was a comprehensive effort to review the needs of Gifford, and that led into the Gifford Neighborhood Plan. And sitting on that task force was Freddie Woolfork representing the GYAC, Olin Bagley from Workforce Employment Opportunities, Edmund Cannon, a citizen, A.J. Harris, president of the Gifford Civic League, Victor Hart, president of NAACP, Workforce Development Board Treasurer Coast John Krakowski, William Mosley from the Economic Development, Kate Knoll from Healthy Start, Julius Reason, an entrepreneur, Jacqueline Reason, an entrepreneur, Dr. David Sullivan, who was the provost at Indian River Community College, Penny Chandler, Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, Milt Thomas, Economic Director, Indian River County, and then we had George Haywood, who was the Economic Director, and then a Mr. Pearson from Habitat for Humanity. And what was presented to the County Commission was a significant and probably starting point as to what needed to be done for Gifford. And this was back in 2002. We've had meetings, the staff has come out, we've had several meetings that have been done, and we've kind of approached this whole process kind of like the movie Groundhog Day, where we wake up every day and we're trying to figure out, you know, the same process and the same process and the same process. And the reason for my meeting request today was we were told after the October 22nd meeting, where there was a lot of people that, I'm not ready for it yet, but oh, cool. I'm not technology inclined.
Okay, neither are we. That's why we have
okay,
Scott.
thank you so much. You know, I'm a little older than I look. I remember using carbon paper when you wanted copies and you had to handwrite everything. Anyway, so we're revisiting the Gifford Neighborhood Plan. It's been a Groundhog Day process. So October 22nd was a very good meeting. We had kind of breakout groups and everybody did their little sticky notes and denoted what the most important issues were. It's funny that, you know, there was quite a critique on the Treasure Coast Regional Planning and the staff-driven presentations that they do, because I could argue the same case with this particular process. But be it what it may, we'll keep going. We were then promised that in January, the findings would come back to the community and there would be a plan. Now, one of the things that the Treasure Coast Regional Planning does is this particular process, and would have probably served us well by not having to tie up staff. I've been told that staff is not able to come back in January because there's some other projects that have taken priority, and they're not able to meet with us until April 25th, somewhere in that point. at which point the information will be brought back to the community. Then decisions will be made as to what the top 7 priorities will be. A long-range term plan will be made, and then it will be presented back to the county commission, and then decisions will be made from there. I find that a year timeline on a request is a little long. We are in need of improvements in Gifford now. They're past due what is needed. The 45th Street design, I understand, will be on hold, and thank you to Commissioner Zork for bringing some sensibility to making sure that the all-aboard crossings are also included with that. But I drive on 12th Street, and they're getting drainage on 12th Street. There's no pedestrian on 12th Street, and we've asked to have those canals filled in and pedestrian walks be provided. We have a large pedestrian population. We have a large bicycle population, as denoted by the sheriff's report on how many people have been either arrested or given citations because they don't have the proper bicycle reports. And that's not reported probably anywhere else in the county at this time. So if we can really have a commitment to move this plan along, to get some serious people that really want to see some improvements for our community done, and get some solid numbers behind it. My fear is that by the time you get back to us in April, I understand your budget process is in March. Is that how it works? You start...
No, it isn't. That's incorrect.
Okay, so that's what you had shared with me. So
no, it isn't. You never asked me, but
okay.
That's incorrect. But you've never asked me. The budget process goes all the way through July, all the way to September.
Right.
So that's totally incorrect. I know you didn't ask me. I don't know you didn't ask Jason.
Okay.
To be fair to Mr. McKenzie, it's not totally incorrect. It begins in the March-April time period and then continues through July, and it's reasonably well set in July, and then we have the public hearings in September. So
because September, I was told that I was too late because all the numbers were submitted in the preliminary, which is done in July, but the process actually starts for requests in March. So maybe I misunderstood, but I do want to make sure we're right in line with the needs of what we need to do to communicate.
Well, that's incorrect, too, so let me give you the right information.
Okay, thank you.
We send out packets in April for nonprofits or agencies that want funding, and to our own departments to, so they can apply and they come through the process. They're required to be back around May for nonprofits, and then we review them and we bring them recommendations back to the Board of County Commissioners in July. That's what we recommend. The commissioners review it in July. They set the tentative millage based on that, for the trim notices, and then we review it again, and they can make changes in the hearings. We do not want we have a process to walk in with an application as a nonprofit and say we want funding, and they haven't been reviewed and gone through the process. So that's how it works. And we'll send you a calendar. We actually have a calendar, and we will send you a calendar that shows our process and our dates.
Okay, so I was off by a month. All right. What I have today, and I've given to you gentlemen, is really something that I wanted to bring to your attention. How do I do the overhead? I'm sorry. Is it up now? No. What do I do?
It's up.
No?
It was up on TV, but you don't see it's.
Okay, great. All right, what I gave you gentlemen is that I've asked from your budget department to kind of give me an idea of what is it that the expenditures, and we've had this discussion in the past as far as what are our dollar commitments to the Gifford community. And starting in 2007, it goes over what your budget was, which is the first line, the $465 million was your budget. Actual spent or actual budget that year was $344 million. And then what was allocated to Gifford was $1.5 $5 million. Along with this has come some discussion.
This chart's totally incorrect. That's the revenue we collected in Gifford. That's not what we spent. You asked Jason for the revenue we collected, not what we spent. Those are two different things.
Okay. So if that is the case, then Mr. Beard, if what you spent is the first page, then we can go ahead and cut that $1.5 million down to $769,000. And the $2.8 million we can cut down to $2.3, and the $797 following the next year will be $333. So the point that I'm trying to make actually would have made the argument better and more favorable to the county, is that based on the budget that is allocated, and I know we like to take care of turtles and sand and everything else and dogs, and I'm all good with that, is that the money that is allocated to Gifford year after year is 0.02% of the budget. We are 6% of the population. We do not receive enough funds to our community that can help with projects that will help improve the quality of life. Now, I did ask Jason to provide the tax revenue that was allocated, and in 2012, I believe Gifford paid, without including school district, if I take what he gave to me correctly, puts in the pot $690,000 a year. That does not include USDA, does not include HUD, it does not include any food stamps or any other federal programs. This is just local. Getting back to the community is only a commitment of $400,000, and you have added $386 for a football field. Go ahead.
Inaccurate. We need to sit down because I don't know where you get your numbers. We need to look at your worksheet.
I get it from your department, sir.
For the record, Jason Brown, County Budget Director, I recognize the budget and actual numbers that were provided by my office. The numbers down lower, the 1.5, the 2.8, I'm not sure exactly where those came from. It says something about from the budget document. We do an annual report that shows expenditures in the Gifford area, but I think it's important to make a distinction. We will identify something like the Gifford Park improvements as an improvement specifically for Gifford, but what's the largest item in our budget? It's the Sheriff's Department budget. That's $42 million of that $300 million. In that sheet that Althea has on there, we don't have a number for the Sheriff's Department because it's difficult to determine how much a lot of the government services that we provide, like the Sheriff's Office, it's hard to identify for a particular neighborhood. We could allocate it based on population or something like that, but we don't have that number in there. So when you're looking at a number that is what did we spend for Gifford, those are items that are more specifically identifiable specifically to Gifford. It has zero in there for sheriffs, law enforcement services, correction services, the various operations of some of our recreation programs, our fire rescue services, our road maintenance expenditures, because it's difficult to identify those amounts. So I don't think it's the analysis kind of identifies what is spent.
I think these are direct dollars we spend on projects or something in. It doesn't include the indirect of all our general government, and that's where the distinction is, and it's sizably different. We need to sit down and we will work on an allocation based on population because unfortunately there's an interpretation problem and it could be on our side as well as yours, and we need to sit down because this doesn't include everything, the sheriff, emergency services, all other
I think
parts,
we got that.
road and bridge.
Commissioner Davis?
No, I guess really that I'll just ask Joe or Jason, is there a way of working what I'm hearing is I'm hearing that there's the assertion that a community is being shortchanged on dollars allocated, and I'm hearing from what's laid in front of us here that this is not accurate, and I get how that can be. But is there really a way of making winding that together?
We'd have to agree on the assumption. We could ask the sheriff what he thinks he spends on patrolling Gifford,
I don't know. Is that what you're after, Althea?
Before we go any further, if we could show the overhead that I've put on here, please. Okay, this is a summary of expenses provided by the budget department for area projects, and these are capital expenditures. These are the totals that your department provided for me and has been providing for years. This column here is not correct, so you can't read it across, because according to what was provided by the budget department, this is reflecting numbers from 1997, I believe, and so they cut it off at 2007. This is expenditures, capital expenditures outlined for the Gifford neighborhood, item by item, is specifically where every dollar is spent for capital expenditures. The second overhead that I'm now putting down is operating expenditures, and is item by item as far as expenditures that were concluded. So, Mr. Beard, I know you're a numbers person, and I like to pride myself on being able to add 1 and 1 equals 2. But the numbers that I'm presenting in this presentation were actually provided based on the information that was given to me. And it is for capital expenditures and operating expenditures. And I did not get this information from some third party. This comes from your budget department. So based on the information that I have received and based on the information that has been provided to me, I am presenting to you the percentages and numbers that have been spent in Gifford over a period of time. I have run the calculator time and time again, hoping that these percentages would look different, that they would not be 0.005 or 0.001 or 0.002. I will be happy to sit down and look at what are we spending in other communities. And I'm hard-pressed, just visually looking at this county, that you can convince me that you are spending an equitable amount in Gifford, that you are spending on Indian River Boulevard that has been paved, that has been provided drainage, that has been spent on 12th Street, that has been spent on lacrosse fields, and has been committed to Gifford. And therefore, the purpose of my presentation today, again, is that in the best interest of quality of life and in the best interest of what I'm showing as the county's commitment to Gifford, that it is not enough, that we do need to get some serious people together that are interested in addressing poverty, not just in Gifford, but in Indian River County, and that your budget is skewed, and that we need to have a commitment to the children, the seniors, and the people that live there. I need sidewalks. We had women pushing strollers yesterday in the street. And it just, everybody drives through Gifford, and we stick our head in the sand, and we pretend as if the issue does not exist. Well, it exists, and it shows, and it's evident, and it's in your numbers, and we can debate it, and I'm open to debate, and I'm open to come in Monday through Thursday, anytime before 2. I'll be happy to meet with you. I'll be happy to meet with anyone that would like to keep this discussion going.
Mr. Chairman, I have
Commissioner Sorry?
I think one thing that might be a little bit helpful is trying to blend the numbers on the capital side and then the operating side. One thing that jumped out to me on the first page was the capital cost for Station 12, which was a request by the Gifford neighborhood to have better fire EMS protection for the community. But what's missing on the second page is about the $850,000 a year to operate that station, to staff it, to service the Gifford community. So I think to get an accurate picture, we just need to agree on, I think Joe called the assumptions of, if we have capital projects when we build them, then we have to operate them. And it doesn't look like on the operating side, the operating costs transferred over from page 1, because there wasn't as many line items on page 2 for operating expenses. But if we can agree, so we have a set of
what happened
of capital and then operating for the community, then you can look at it, and then we can really see what is the real disparity in the number, but have one that both sides, I don't want to say both sides, but that we Althea and the others agree on, so then we can really look at the real number.
The second sheet, can I explain the second sheet? We were asked the question of what programs did we pay for in Gifford that just apply to Gifford? Right. That's that second sheet. It doesn't cover all our other governmental, or like we said, which is sizable. So we'll get with Althea. It depends which question you ask and what kind of answer, but we'll get with Althea and we'll work out all the costs and bring it back. These are programs that are just for Gifford that we pay for.
Right.
And
that's what that sheet
I think it would be helpful, instead of just trying to get a specific question, is ultimately at the end of the day, what correlation are you trying to make? And it sounds like to me what you're saying is that for the population, Gifford's not getting their fair share. Is that? And I'm not saying it's true
Gifford
or not, or I'm not trying to put words in.
Specifically has needs that are based on lack of services, whether it's lack of services in infrastructure, whether it's lack of services in social services that then lead to high crime, whether it's services providing employment opportunities, whether it's services providing lighting, which, by the way, we pay for, which is included in that number, which never adds up to the full amount of our contribution, but nobody comes back and says, here's a $21,000 check, let's see if we can get some street lights up. And you know, I'm going to be honest with you, I can do this all day, and we've done this all day, Mr. Beard, and sometimes we can go all day. We can argue this over and over again. The physical evidence of the state of Gifford does not have to be debated. It is what it is. And it is a blighted community that has suffered from negligence, whether it's deliberate or not. Regarding the firehouse, Commissioner Zork, the firehouse, and being someone who works in planned development, the firehouse was contingent on Waterway Village providing 1,700 houses in that community. We did not increase that density on that side of the street. And technically, that fire station is on the other side of Gifford because, you know, the boundaries change every now and then. When that firehouse was done, there was also a commitment to do several firehouses through Indian River County, and the funds were provided through the emergency services and also as an update, which was mandated from what I understand, because I don't keep up on everything, I got children, by the government to bring up our evacuation and emergency services to code. Every other fire station in this county received funding directly from that, was built without question. Everybody got what they needed. The impact fees that were committed from Waterway Village were supposed to go into this fire station, and then we took CDBG funds and coupled it to build that fire station. No other community was required to take their community development block grants to help build a fire station. Nobody else. And everybody knows that money could have been well served somewhere else. So when we start debating, I can do this all day. All I'm asking is that I don't want to have to go back and reflect on all the discretions and things that haven't been done and bring up why is it that possibly because politically or philosophically Gifford is ignored. What I'm asking for is that the Gifford Neighborhood Plan has been delayed till April to come back to the community, and we seem to be dragging our feet on assessing what is needed. What is needed is that we come to a conclusion on certain programs and that we do a collaborative effort with the school district and if the sheriff's department as necessary to create a healthy community. But I have asked the county to take the lead on this because we need infrastructure first. And once we have a visual, we can build other social economic programs around it. I'm not asking you to solve our problems. We need to solve some of our problems. But if we don't have the resources that we need, and we live in a community that is clearly blighted and clearly deprived, we cannot expect things to get any better. And with that, I rest my case. And Mr. Beard, as always, it will be a pleasure to meet with you and go over whatever it is we can do to make things work. I mean, it took 3 years for us to get the baseball field graded for $3,000. We have got to stop this. I am not here to, as your new attorney in the Press Journal said, to cuss you out. I'm here to ask you to be very conscious about our community and what we need. Those were comments that I get in the lobby. It was not said in public. That I didn't speak that day because apparently I didn't cuss out the county commission. So for the public's information, I don't come here to do that. I come here to bring issues that I hope can be worked on. And every department in this county has been very cooperative, including Jason, including community development. The information that I receive is directly from your staff, and I've also spoken with you, Mr. Beard, to confirm some of the information. I have been told the plan will not be till April 26th, brought back to the community, and I'm asking that there's some consideration given to help this process along as soon as we can, and I'll be happy to cooperate as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Fletcher?
Yeah, I just wanted to address two statements. I don't recall reading anything in the press journal regarding what the...
These were personal statements made in the lobby.
But you said it was with the press journal, so I'm sorry. I assumed that you meant that it was in printed media, and I don't recall reading that. I don't want the public to perceive that there was some kind of debate that was printed. In addition, I did... begin the Gifford Neighborhood Plan discussion, or open it up for discussion, and we did clearly state, Stan Bowling's here, I believe that he did the opening statements, and along with Bob Keating, it was well explained that this would be a lengthy process, that it would require several charrette-type meetings, it would be broken down. The Gifford neighborhood did not like the approach of having breakout sessions, so we re-engineered the Gifford neighborhood plan discussion, and it was well attended. I believe many commissioners were there. More importantly, staff was there, and well conducted, and it was also well explained that we anticipate having a closure to the discussion, the debate, all the input, assessment, evaluation, sometime about April, which was 18 months from the discussion. And Stan Bowling's here. Stan, is that correct? Did we anticipate it being in a closure in and about April? And I just wanted to assure that the public is not misled that the county commission nor staff made any suggestion or delay in the Gifford neighborhood plan discussion, analyzation, or delivery back to this county commission. Stan.
Yeah. For the record, Stan Bowling, County Community Development Director. Yeah, the Gifford neighborhood plan process does involve a lot of public input as well as some staff analysis and work with other groups. And we had originally wanted to have the time frame to be a little bit earlier than April. What's going on with the Gifford neighborhood plan, and what's I think been very positive about it, is as we've gotten community input starting back in July, we've had some parallel initiatives in the Gifford area. We've gotten information from the community and actually started on some other initiatives while we're going through the planning process. So those initiatives are going forward. Ball field improvements, West Gifford initiative, got some input on that. We're coming back to you all next month with that. The beautification project. So there are some things that actually have been informed by the process, and we're coming back in April with a community meeting and more for the community to look at. So I think things are going parallel, and the process is working as intended. But it's going to be up to the community as to how many meetings we need going forward, and partially how long the process is ultimately going to take.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any commissioners? Anything else?
Good.
No. Althea, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We look forward to continued discussion with you. Mr. Reingold, if you'd do the honors, please, for the public notice items.
Absolutely. To the chair and to the full commission and those in the audience and listening and watching at home. Public notice items, we have a notice of scheduled public hearings, one for February 4th, 2014. That is Grand Harbor Community Association, Inc. and G.H. Vero Beach Development, LLC's request for a comprehensive plan future land use map amendment to redesignate plus or minus 8.3 acres located at the southwest corner of Indian River Boulevard and Grand Harbor Boulevard from CI to M1, and to rezone those plus or minus 8.3 acres from CO to RM6. and to simultaneously redesignate plus or minus 8.3 acres located at the southeast corner of Indian River Boulevard and 53rd Street from M1 to CI, and to rezone those plus or minus 8.3 acres from RM6 to CG. Those are legislative and quasi-judicial transmittal public hearing items. And then there is another item for March 4th, 2014. This is a county-initiated request to redesignate plus or minus 70 acres located at the east end of Oslo Road, south side, Orca Diamond Track, from C2, Conservation 2, up to 1 unit per 40 acres, and L2, Low Density Residential 2, up to 6 units per acre, to C1 and Conservation 1, 0 density, and rezone those plus or minus 70 acres from RS6, Single Family Residential District, up to 6 units per acre, and RS1, Single Family Residential District, up to 1 unit per acre, to Con 1, Conservation 1 District, 0 density. These are legislative and quasi-judicial final action public hearings. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Dylan. There's no county administrator matters. Under departmental matters, J, utility services. Item 1, amendment number 1 to work order number 2 for engineering consulting services with Schulke, Biddle, and Stoddard, LLC, for professional services for engineering design and construction services, conflict resolutions between water and sewer mains, and proposed drainage on US 1 South 11th Street to the county line. Memorandum dated January 6, 2014. Good morning, Mr. Burke.
Good morning, Chairman. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. We have before the board consideration to do an amendment number 1 to work order number 2 for Schulke, Biddle, and Stoddard. As noted in the backup, the FDOT plans were submitted, but however were changed. This amendment is to compensate SBS for additional services, not only for the design and engineering changes that have to occur, but also the construction administration and oversight that has to continue. Initially, SBS had about 3 months of time on the job, but FDOT plans to have this up to approximately a year. So this is additional services that would be coming out of the operational fund to fund the amount of $18,741.88.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have motion from Commissioner Slurry, second from Commissioner Flesher. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 2 is cost recovery options on the 66th Avenue water main project from 8th Street to 16th Street. Vinny, good morning again.
Good morning, Commissioners. We have a small presentation today to go over the 66th Avenue water main extension project from 8th Street up to 16th Street. What I'd like to do is to go over the history of how we got to this point, to explain, I think in short detail, some of the decisions that were made up to this point, to go over some of the cost analysis that staff has done to present to the board, and then ultimately present those to the board for final decision on how to move forward. Back in 2002, July as a matter of fact, the board approved and authorized the utility services to add approximately 1,300 linear feet, item number 1 in the backup here. That was to extend the water main north from 8th Street outside the urban service area as part of the 66th Avenue road widening project. Approximately a month later, the board then authorized and allowed the utility services to upsize that line from a 4-inch line to 8-inch for fire flow conditions, to extend that line approximately 2,300 feet north of 8th Street. And then about a year later, in July of 2013, it was determined that it would be in the best interest of all to extend that line all the way up to 16th Street. So that's what the board approved in July of 2013. The comprehensive plan amendment. We worked with staff to do a comprehensive plan amendment that was brought in front of the board. Some of the dates are as follows. It was started initially in 2013, where some of the residents from 66th Avenue came in front of you to discuss how they had some poor water quality issues. It must be noted that the board asked both community development and utilities to work with Department of Health to determine if the potable water was unfit for consumption. And to my knowledge, there have not been any tests to date to say that is unfit for consumption. That was part of the initial tie-in to the comprehensive plan that would have allowed these folks to connect. But since the determination was not made, it was more of an aesthetic issue, not a health issue. So we went in front of the board in 2013. Application was submitted. There was a P&Z approval process in August 22nd of 2013. P&Z unanimously approved to move forward. There was a first public hearing brought to the board in August of 2013, and then the transmission to the state. There is a procedural issue that has to go forward as part of this process where the state has to look out to other stakeholders. There were no comments at that point. A second public hearing was done in December 3rd, as a matter of fact, 2013, and the board unanimously approved at that point as well. Finally, the paperwork had to be sent to the state. Staff had sent the paperwork to the state back in December. It's approximately a 45-day procedural process, and as of Wednesday the 15th, we received notification from the state that we were able to move forward. So 2 important questions I think the residents of 66th Avenue would like to know. When can we connect? There were 3 items in order for them to connect. 2 of them were procedural. One was the final ratification from the state, which was talked about. We received that as the agenda was being written on the 15th, Wednesday. We also, on that very same day, received DEP notice on the northern section of the line. We had previously had installed, pressure tested, and had bacteriological testing done for the southern section, but the northern section, the section from 12th Street to 16th Street, was approved and cleared by the DEP. So for all intents and purposes, from a state standpoint, the line has been installed, tested, and is cleared for use. And I think the last question is how much it's going to cost. And this is our presentation today, is to go over some of those cost mechanisms for board consideration. This is a very unusual process, and we have used several mechanisms to extend the county water lines in an efficient manner. Sometimes developers come in, they have a plan development, and in some cases the developers put those lines in. Other times there's master plan lines where we have larger transmission lines, 16-inch, 24-inch lines that are put in place, whereas line extension fees may apply. Or traditionally, we can go the assessment route. So what I would like to do is talk about the Pine Tree Park assessment. But before I do that, I just wanted to say in the backup, there's several different methods that we can look at for the cost calculation. That is a square foot method. Very simply, the square foot of the property as determined by the parcel boundaries is divided by the total square foot for those folks that are in the project area. This historically has been used by the utility services for some of the assessments. We also have the linear foot of the property boundary that is adjacent to the utility services is also determined as to the total line that is put in place for a percentage. That percentage is then used to allocate the costs. Or the most simple term is the equitable assessment, whereas the total project cost is then divided by the number of properties included in the project. This is the most simplistic method, and as a summary will show, we only have that one, but again, there's 3 methods that we propose for board consideration. So looking at the assessments, we look at Pine Tree Park. Again, this is within the urban service area. This is just south of the area that we're talking about right now. And you can see in the screen on this column right here, the square footage method was used to determine the cost. And the cost varies considerably depending on the size of the property. Now, I just pulled one assessment roll. This does not include all of the projects that were in that particular assessment, but I just wanted to show you that the urban service area is denoted with the dotted line there. We had a nodal network that was installed. This is, again, Pine Tree Park. 4th Street is on the bottom side of the screen, and then 66th Avenue is running north-south on the screen. And in some cases, you had folks that were just outside the urban service area that were still allowed to be able to connect, that were actually included as part of the project. But in this case, it's just important for the board to note that all of these homeowners that were part of this project, even though it was an assessment, had paid 100% of the cost for that project at that particular time. So, how much does this project cost? The engineering is about $24,000, and the total construction is about $327,000 for the total project cost of about $350,000. Scenario 1. We initially looked at just the line extension that was initially done back in 2012 by the board. This is a 2,300-foot extension that we broke it out into 2 phases, if you will. The cost is about $152,000. And if you look at the numbers here, these numbers correspond to the backup. They don't mean anything, at least for this particular slide, but it's important to note that you had potentially 13 parcels that could connect to this water. The two parcels on the bottom portion of your screen, the 850 and the 815, have already been connected to county water, so they were not included as part of this process. For reasons that I'll explain, is we did not feel, the staff did not feel, that we should include the square footage method or the lineal foot method because you had a wide variety of folks for different parcel sizes. For instance, if you look at parcel number 5, you have a very small footprint for the linear foot cost method, as well as parcel number 3. It would have a disproportionately small parcel face as opposed to, say, parcel 6, or perhaps parcel 4, or even perhaps parcel 1. And the backup describes those varying costs as well. If you just use the equal method, it breaks it up to about $11,721 per parcel for the capital costs only. It must also be noted that these costs do not include the impact fees and some of the other fees that apply, the meter fee, the deposit fee, and the connection charges that would be required for some of the homeowners to get it from the right-of-way to the connection point on the property. So we broke it down. Again, if you take the $12,000 for engineering, add it to the construction cost of $140,000, you achieve the $152,000, which is in the backup. So this is scenario 1, the 8th to 12th Street extension. On the bottom right is the $152,000. It's hard to see here. $152,000 cost. And the equitable assessment here. Again, just for comparison purposes, we detailed the linear foot method and the square foot method to achieve the percentages. This scenario does not fully capture the total cost of the project. It does not include some of the parcels that are just to the north, so staff feels that this would not be an ideal one to consider, but it was something that was part of the process initially when it was started before the board authorized us to loop the services. Scenario number 2. This is a loop system. This is a 70-30 split. 70% of the cost would be paid by the homeowners, 30% of the cost would be paid by utilities. How do we come up with that determination? Well, we had looked at the lineal foot of the cost of the project, and we also had determined that this was going to be looped up here on 16th Street at the top of the screen, and then down here on 8th Street. So there is some benefit to the utility services for redundancy and also additional water flows if we ever had problems to isolate flow. We would not have to shut off a large portion of our customer base. So scenario number 2, $350,000 cost. There's multiple cost-sharing methods that are applicable. If you take the equitable cost share on the 70-30 split, you achieve a $13,600 approximate number for each of these parcels. And now this is assuming that they would all connect, and they may not all connect as well. We included in the backup, it must be important to note that this is an A1 designation and the comp plan amendment. It also states that the zoning would not be able to change. So if you look here, we also denoted the structures per parcel. Some of these parcels do not have structures, and some of them do. That's scenario number 2. Scenario 3 is pretty much the same thing, except there is a 50-50 split, and that's when the cost per resident drops under $10,000, $9,740.92. Scenario number 4. We had looked at extending the boundary out to 500 feet, which is on either side of the roadway. The water line is running north to south. In this case, it's not shown in blue, but it's running north to south here. And we looked at potentially having other parcels connect as well to try to reduce some of the cost to the homeowners. However, it's interesting to note that there's no structures on any of these parcels, but we included, at least for the 500 foot, to be consistent with the comp plan amendment, to perhaps include 6 additional parcels, which are shown on this map. If you include those 6, again, they're noted here in yellow. There are no structures on any of those 6 parcels. They are designated currently as A1. It reduces the cost, $10,227.97. That's a 70-30 split, yes. So again, 70% is by the residents, 30% by IRC.
On a 50-50.
Yeah. And then the other one is very similar to this, scenario number 5, which is the 50-50 split with, again, those 6 additional properties for scenario number 5. So the cost summaries. Let me just reiterate again, this is a non-typical project for us. It is not an assessment. Just want to make that clear. This is not an assessment. It is a voluntary connection. I just want to make it also clear that the capital costs as presented here do not include the additional costs that I mentioned earlier, the $1,300 impact fee, the meter fee, the deposit, and the varying cost to connect from the right-of-way to the point of connection on the house. Again, what's financially appealing to some of the residents that have been patient during this almost 2-year process would create an additional burden to the utility and existing ratepayers. There's two costs. Commissioner Zurich, I think you just hit on that again with Althea. There's two costs. You have the capital costs initially that are up front, the $350,000. But then you have the operation and maintenance costs that go along with it as well. And right now, when we have a line that's put in place, when you have a high density of folks that are within the urban service area, you have a number of residents that are paying into the system. Unfortunately, we're looking at some of the residents that are outside the urban service area. We don't have the high densities, and that's why you have the higher cost per homeowner that could be attributable here. But the O&M costs that go into maintaining the fire hydrants, maintaining the water quality, maintaining the line, the level of service in that line, are not supported adequately with just the few number of folks that would be connected to that line. The low density drives the higher price. I just talked about that. The comp plan, as mentioned before, keeps the existing zoning in place, so we don't have a scenario where somebody may come in, connect at this point, and then subdivide and allow 30 or 40 folks to be able to plot on some of these larger pieces of property. We talked about the fire protection. The low density necessitates the needs, in some cases, to subsidize these costs from other ratepayers. So if we don't cover our costs adequately from some of the ratepayers that could tie into the system, we then have to find a way to cover those costs. How do we cover those costs? We would have to draw on other ratepayers that, in some cases, like we had explained earlier for Pine Tree Park, had paid 100% of the cost in that assessment. We also do not want to set a precedence moving forward. We understand that these folks are looking to connect. We, the utilities, want to be able to connect. We want to grow our system, but we want to do it in an efficient manner. We want to do it in such a way that we are able to cover our costs. The enterprise system that we have in utilities is, and it's in such a way a business, we have to recover our costs. And it does not make financial sense to somehow entice some of those folks in order to be able to reduce some of their costs to connect to a system that has to be paid for in some way. And in some cases, it's paid for initially not only through the ratepayers that have paid their full share, but also through the O&M costs that come out later on. So we summarized those costs in your backup. Staff has recommended to the Board of County Commission, because it is a loop system, because it is providing a benefit to the utility services for the redundancy, to go with cost scenario recovery option number 2, which in essence is a 70-30 split. 70% is paid for by some homeowners who elect to connect. Again, this is not an assessment. Who elect to connect. 30% of the cost would be paid for by the utility services. The county portion of that $350,000 cost is approximately $105,000. Again, not all the costs are shown here, just the equal cost per resident is shown here for simplicity, but in the backup you have the square foot method and the linear foot method as well. And that concludes the presentation on the 66th Avenue. And
I'd like to add two things to Vinnie's presentation. Having the fire hydrant there is going to reduce those people, should reduce their homeowners insurance or keep it from going up as much as it would. The other thing I'd like to mention, if we did continue to do projects like this, we won't be an enterprise fund. You'll be subsidizing it through taxes. I mean, that's my thought, because you've got to recoup. It is an enterprise fund. You've got to recoup your costs. You can't, it's a going concern. So this is an unusual project. We wouldn't normally recommend that split because it is an enterprise fund, and it's got to carry itself. And if we continue to do projects like this, we'd probably lose our financial stability that we have.
Okay, thank you. And gentlemen, before we begin the discussion, I think we have two issues to resolve. One is the cost basis, be it the equitable share, linear, or square footage. And then if we decide that, then how do we apply it on the various splits? Yeah. So I think maybe to kind of keep it focused, and why don't we just talk about the how the cost share is going to be, and see if we come to agreement. If the equitable share, if we all think that's the best way, then we can get that behind us and move on to the other discussion.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask Vinnie to pull up a slide to pose a question that might change that discussion. The one that showed the connection, the blue line, dotted line from 16th Street south, if you could pull that slide up for a minute. I don't remember which.
16th Street south?
It might be that one. And while he's pulling that up, I also wanted to express that Bob Grace, a property owner along the segment, that actually a family member, his daughter has parcel, I think,
11.
labeled 11.
Yeah.
Right.
That one and
that. He's not able to be here today. When he did speak last time, he was looking forward to the discussion on this, and he's not able to be here today. Not that that changes our reason to vote or not vote on something, but I just wanted to bring that up. When you look, here's how I would look at the fair share assessment. To get the people's parcels numbers 11 through 15, if we were originally only going to serve those, we could have designed a step-down project size starting from 12th Street at an 8-inch line, then step it down to a 6-inch and a 4-inch, and then stopping at the end of the canal or where the last parcels would connect onto. The benefit of balancing or looping the system, the cost going across the canal to the north, I don't see as that's a benefit to the system, and then the future development of parcel, it's 1555 on the north side of the canal. I know both of those have been recently cleared on both sides. I don't know if there's a preliminary app in, but those costs should be borne by the benefit users on the north side of the canal.
And they would connect off of that line that was existing in place off of
So
16.
including the cost going across the bridge to balance the system and to benefit those property owners, I think should be deducted out of the system, and maybe looking at, if we were only going to go to service parcels up through 11 through 15, what option would that been to service those, and then the cost over and above that, or creating a scenario 6 would be, we could have serviced them to fulfill their desire for water in a less costly method, but to balance and loop the system, we ran the 8-inch, I think it's 8-inch line, the full length all the way up to 16th Street. But I think a good portion of that cost doesn't necessarily need to fall on parcels 11 through 15 and south the other way. That's just another way to look at it, because going north of that was to benefit balancing the system overall, which is a system benefit, not necessarily a benefit to the users, but to establish a cost of what would it have been if we did the minimal service design size to service those parcels up to 11 and 15 and stopped at what would that cost element have been, and maybe that's the basis of what is the fair share recoupment amount. Anything above that is to balance the system or to benefit the parcels on the north side of the canal, just as a discussion.
Yeah, and again, I was hoping we could get to just looking at the parcels.
Mm-hmm.
As Vinny pointed out, some have different square footage, some have different linear, and then the equal method is, you're kind of talking about the total cost and how to divvy that up. I was just trying to see if we couldn't just agree that the equal share is how we want to do it, then we can start going down that route.
I'll help you with some consensus on that. I'm on a unit basis, not linear, not acreage.
Equal.
Yeah,
okay.
right. I mean,
it's myself as well.
And a good example of that, quite frankly, and we might need to go ahead and discuss that here. One of those pieces of 11, see how it's got the arrow there? Grice's piece that's not buildable because it doesn't meet the minimum square footage. Lot 11, you see that arrow? I'm assuming that we're going to take 11 and the arrow south of 18, and is that going to be one unit?
Yeah, it's considered one on the property.
Y'all follow that
appraisers.
logic? What just happened there? That is a non-conform. No, it's not even worse than that. You can't build on that south piece.
So this is
That
one,
piece there.
one
Right.
lot, yes.
So therefore, all that's going to be considered one unit.
Yeah.
And it addresses everything in mass. So I just think that that's the fairest thing that.
Commissioner Fleischer, you concurrence at the
agreed.
equal
Yes.
allocation?
Yeah.
Commissioner Flory?
I'm good with the equitable.
Okay, all right.
now.
So I don't know if we need a vote, but it sounds like there's five
Yes.
of us agreed that equitable. Okay, good. So now we need to discuss whether to include the total project cost as Commissioner Zork brought up, and then figure that out, and then decide what the split is. So,
I'd like to-
Commissioner Davis?
I think you have to be careful with that, because when you get arguing over when you drop that line, you're going to have all kinds, because when you do an assessment, you have to prove benefit derived. And the benefit is they got water. So just because I'd be very careful going down that road, I think that you could, someone could challenge that. I will say that for sure. I'm pretty sure they could challenge it.
Right, and I guess the other point is if we didn't extend it and loop it, there'd be additional maintenance costs because it wasn't a loop system, and with only a few people, the water flow wouldn't be. So it was almost, in my mind, to be able to offer water that we had confidence could be a good quality and clean water, we had to loop it to provide that service.
Yeah, in a sense, we wouldn't have even talked about looping it if it weren't for the discussion about
For the
serving
benefit of the
these
system.
people
Right.
outside the urban service area. So, again, that to me undercuts to some degree Commissioner Zork's argument.
Right, okay. Commissioner Davis, you were...
Just real quick, so the $350,000 that you're saying it cost, is that the cost that is in addition to, or if we went back and changed our mind and said, okay, we're going to loop this system. We're going to loop the system for the betterment of the system. We're going to make it so that if we have issues with it, and that we'll be able to close it off perhaps near the college, and then use this to provide water to the state college. You follow my logic? Is that so? Yes or no to that question?
I mean, when I first got here and I looked at the CIP, I did not see this as part of the 5-year build-out, so that it was not included in our capital improvements plan. It was not something that was the largest size that we had traditionally had for a transmission main that would be determined to be a master plan line. So I think it was only part of the question when it was initially started in 2002, when you had the construction going on with 66th Avenue roadway improvement projects. So I think from our standpoint, from our planning standpoint, we had never initially intended to loop the service at that particular location.
But
It was the iterative process as we were going through this, and as it extended for the water quality reasons, and just because we didn't want to just have a dead end and we'd have to have some water quality flushing, it was determined to then continue that line up into 16th Avenue.
So even if we didn't change our comp plan, and we'd still be hearing from people saying, we want to tap into it, we said no, and this line is being ran in front of your house, not for you to tap into for the betterment of the utility system.
We didn't feel, obviously, if we didn't have it in our 5-year plan, we didn't feel we needed to loop it. It wasn't a necessity. It might be nice to have. So that's why it wasn't in our 5-year plan. I think
that was my point, Commissioner. The only reason, as I see it, that we talked about looping it is because we wanted to be able to come up with some way to serve the customers on 66th Avenue that aren't in the urban service area.
As I saw this, and maybe it's the chicken and egg situation, though, are we doing, or did we do this project because the residents wanted this pipe, or were we doing the pipe to loop the system at the same time we were paving the road?
we did it because they requested. We weren't going to do it. It's not in our 5-year plan. We were not going to do it until they came in, they had bad water. We would not have, I don't think we would have put it in our 10-year plan to loop it. I've looked at it and discussed
How come in my mind I thought I remembered utility work going on there for some reason?
There was a line to go from 8th Street to 11th Street, roughly, and that's where I got, that line was originally going to start out at 8 and then taper down to service the people up to about 11th Street. Is that right, Benny, or somewhere in that?
Yeah,
that's where I got the stepping down, because that's how the line was originally designed to serve from, get the bearings right, from 8th Street south was what I call a stair-step line, or it was tapered down because of the smaller number of users to keep the flushing of the line minimal, so you make the line diameter smaller, so when they're using their water, it's moving more volume through the pipe. And to use that concept of how the original line was designed from 4th Street to 8th Street, to use that cost to go from 8th Street to 12th Street and a little bit above, because that's how the original line was designed.
I have no problem. I want to be as fair as I possibly can, and I understand there's going to be a cost associated with this. But I just want to make sure that I'm clear in my mind that truly, with the 70-30 or 50-50 split, I follow that logic. But I'm really trying to say, okay, and I want to hear everybody, we would not have put any pipe there whatsoever had the people walked up to us and said, right, we'd like for you to go ahead and run pipe while you're paving the road.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's how it started.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Also, I'd like to point out, when you talk about stepping down, people who are on and correct me if I'm wrong, Vinny, on a 4-inch line, you can't have a fire hydrant.
That's correct.
So the people who, if you assume that, you'd assume those people wouldn't get the benefit, which complicates it, of the fire hydrant for fire flow to get their insurance down.
Okay.
Oh, and I agree, but the original line from 4th Street to 8th Street, a portion of that did not have a hydrant size because it was stepped down. I don't know what the length of that step down was, but I know at some point it did change from an 8-inch hydrant size line to a smaller diameter, but I don't remember they particulars on it.
Right, and again, the opposite occurred back in August of 2012, where the line was then upsized in order for the fire flow conditions to be present, so that we could add additional fire hydrants along the way. So.
And I'd like to point out that when you look at the difference here of the 13,000, we're being very fair, because you look at Pine Tree Park and the density, and they paid 10,000. They paid their full cost, and staff has recommended, I thought, a very fair. You're outside the urban service boundary. It's longer running of the line. Everyone else had to pay for their share running the line, and it's only 13. Yeah, I think that's a very fair option.
And you only have to pay if you want to hook up, whereas if you're in Pine Tree Park and you're one of the minority that didn't vote for it, didn't want water, doesn't hook up to water, you're still assessed. Yeah. On this, you only pay if you want the water.
Danny, if we go with the second scenario, number 2, that you're recommending, there's 18 properties at 13,600. What if some point in the future somebody in that 500-foot buffer wants to hook up? Would they pay the 13.6 assessment, or do they just pay the 1,200 impact fee and get to hook up?
They would pay the cost to get it, obviously, from the meter to their house. I think that they would not be responsible for the capital purchase option like some of the residents that would be within here, unless we determine that we can expand that area at some point to include additional properties within that 500-foot buffer that we had talked about. In that case, then you would include some of those areas. Again, you have some properties here that are outside. Most of the ones here are large enough to be included both within the 66th Avenue corridor and the 500-foot area.
It's just those additional 6.
Yep.
A question. Do we know, is there a pre-app in on the property north of the canal, since there's active land clearing going on both sides of the street?
No, there's an eminent domain case.
Well, I know there is on a portion of that. But on the larger part that's not, I think, part of the eminent domain, but to get a land clearing permit, you have to be doing something in a...
They're both, literally, that road, our road's cutting that piece of property in half.
Right.
So that land clearing is... I don't know.
I think we have water already there, don't we?
Yeah.
No, it's, well, you do on 16th,
On
but
16th,
this is going to
yes.
run past the front of it.
And that's why we didn't include them as part of the benefiting, or some of the properties that would be
'cause
able
they
to
can
connect,
enter
because they'd be
16th,
connected from
South side.
16th.
Come south.
And will they have a developer's agreement, or how will the county recoup the line cost on 16th Street when they connect?
I'd have to go back and see if there was an existing developer's agreement that was in place when that line was run, and whether or not they would be responsible for certain line extension fees that would be applicable to that property.
In most cases, if it's a development we require, they run to us, so they would pay their development costs. That's just about all.
The utility service there might have been a part of Point West on 16th.
Could it? Well, that's true. Yeah, it could have been. I don't know when it came in, before or after.
One other thing that I would also like to comment on, the PSC, which regulates some of the Public Service Commission, sometimes allows FP&L to do capital improvement projects, and they often have a 6-year payback. In other words, if they can justify the cost of running that transmission line and recouping their costs from a KW consumption point, they can justify it if they can recoup some of their costs within 6 years. If you look at hypothetically connecting all of 18 properties, at least initially, say tomorrow if they all come in with the check and want to connect, the payback, at least on the consumption portion, is 60 years.
Because our rates are so...
Because you don't have any folks. I mean, typically if you had this inside the urban service area, you might have 50 or 60 properties that would be able to not only offset the capital costs, but to pay the O&M costs. But just strictly looking at a consumption only. Now, if you split that down to 9 and say only 9 of those properties, you're looking at a 121-year payback. So from a consumption standpoint, too, we can't justify at least...
Actually, staff was more lenient than I would have been. I thought it should have been 100%, because, first of all, they're getting a deal like no one else is. When we do an assessment project, you're leaned and you have to pay. They won't have to pay unless they want to hook up. So this is not a great project for us financially. It worries me. We start doing projects like this in our utilities. I get extremely worried that if we start doing many of these, our financial condition of our utilities will change, and we won't be a going concern like we've been, and we won't have the bond ratings we have.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Sark?
I'd like to sort of reiterate or to add to what Vinny said about the FP&L 6-year payback. We had the gas hearing, or the gas workshop, and they said a very similar type of things, that they wouldn't entertain an extension of their line unless they had the 6-year payback. So again, the private sector wouldn't even be entertaining this project, period, I still think it may be appropriate for us to entertain it, but we, again, I think need to remember that this is an enterprise fund, and it's paid for by the other customers. So I think we need to have some somewhat private sector rigor in here, which, again, you know, I think that the 70-30 is a certainly fair and generous split.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, one other. But in all fairness, or looking at it from 4th Street to 8th Street, they had a portion of the line was 8-inch, 6-inch, or 4-inch, or some combination thereof. I don't remember what the mix was. We could have used that same model and provided water only from 12th Street to parcels 11 and 15 and not cross the canal. To me, keeping the line larger to benefit the loop portion, and so there was an alternative that could have been, we could have provided them water to address their request without going across and balancing the system. Somewhere in the discussion, that improvement to loop or balance the system came into play, and that's what brought it over the bridge. But we could have served them standalone from parcels 11, 15 south to 12th Street and never crossed the canal. Somewhere there was a benefit to the system for doing that.
Yeah, that's why we gave you the 30, which is very good. Also, some of the people wouldn't have the fire protection if you went to the 4. That's what we're saying.
Well, that's true.
And also,
a couple of
if you had a line breakdown, say, near 8th Street for some reason, fitting failed, now the folks that are up on the north side are out of water.
Right.
If you had a reloop system, if you had the redundancy, you'd be able to isolate some of those flows. You'd have some inline baths, and you'd be able to at least accommodate those. We had a construction project off 12th Street. You had a unidirectional line put in place, but when we were coming across with the culvert pipe, we had to shut off 12th. So now you're talking, you know, bacteriological testing, flushing of the lines, and additional water to make sure that those residents have water service once that. Now, that wasn't because of a line break. That was because we were doing some drainage work in place.
No, it's always best to have where you can service it from two directions.
I'm ready to hear from anybody from the public.
That's what I was going to get to. Yep, absolutely. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment? Yes, sir. Please come up and give us your name and address. Welcome.
My name is Alex Walters. I live at 1295 66th Avenue. That's parcel number 13 that we're discussing here. This discussion was, a point was made that they should go with the cost per parcel, figuring the full amount divided by the number of parcels. I'd like to point out that there's, for a number of these parcels, very small ones, residential lots is what they amount to, there's no way that you can ever recover that cost that you're proposing by selling that lot or anything else, by selling that property. Number two, the larger pieces of property that would, if we went by per footage, either square foot or a linear foot, those bigger parcels are revenue producing. They either have citrus or agricultural operations, cattle, or they have a quasi-commercial operation on those parcels. They're revenue producing. They're not a residential lot. That the benefit would be much larger for those parcels. The chances of those parcels tying in would be very low, I agree. But in the fairness of this thing, I think that we should go by, just as they did in Pine Tree Park, by looking at per square footage of the piece of property. I know there are people there that would definitely benefit from going with a fixed amount for each landowner there. But it's a definite inequity when you look at the sizes of about 4 or 5 of these properties are strictly residential lots. They do not enjoy the benefits of agricultural zoning or anything else. And feel that you should consider that. The point that Mr. Baird has made about the fire hydrants and the change in insurance, I questioned Bob Grice about that, and he said that it would not be a change because we already enjoyed such a high rating from our fire departments that it would not make a difference in my homeowner's insurance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that'd be a good question at the upcoming
That's right.
ISO workshop, Commissioner.
And that's part of it, what we'll get into that day.
Yes. Thank you. Appreciate your comments, sir. Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to speak to this matter? Okay.
She coming up?
Yes, ma'am. Come on up. Don't be shy.
Yeah, we've come this far.
Yeah, you might as well come on up and let us know what you're thinking, please.
Please.
No? Okay. Gentlemen, any further discussion? Mr. Reingold?
I just have a simple question for Mr. Burke. We've talked about, there's a 50-50 split, a 70-30, 100%. The 70-30 split, was that based upon roughly 30% of the cost to loop the system, and that 70% of the cost of the system was essentially designed to provide the service to the citizens or the customers?
It's actually a little bit less. We had looked at the linear foot of piping that would be extended outside the property owners in question versus extending it over the bridge over Mr. Gunner's canals and tying into 16th. In the paving process, the 75-25 split, which traditionally has been used in the county, and to be consistent with what we had looked at in other projects, we felt that we would be able to help entice some of the customers to get them to connect, to try to grow our system in an efficient manner, and such to be able to come to that 70-30 split. So that's why we had proposed that as recommendation number 2, based upon that split for what hydraulic share would be used on the southern portion of the line versus the line to be extended across the canal, which you can't tell from here, but there's actually additional pipe work that goes from the east side over to the west side before it connects into the 16th Avenue main.
That's right, because one's on the one side of the street, and when you cross it, it would actually...
For the majority, it does run up on the east side, but then it crosses over to the west side across the canal.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Floyd?
At this point, I'm ready to make a motion for the equitable basis of a 730 split as outlined on scenario 2.
Slip there, Commissioner?
Must have been.
Second. Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting, Commissioner. Would you please repeat your motion?
I'd be happy to, sir.
I got carried away.
I'll try to watch that, though. Some things are always on your mind.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm going to make a motion for the equitable basis for the cost with the scenario number 2, 730 split.
730 split.
And that was
Okay.
seconded.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Solari, second from Commissioner Flesher for staff recommendation scenario number 2. Gentlemen, is there any discussion on the motion on the floor?
I
Commissioner Zorc?
have one more, one other question to Vinnie, if I might. Under scenario 4, let's see, there's two 70-30 splits, right? Scenario 2 and scenario 4.
Scenario 4 added the 6 additional properties.
That are
on the
within
500-foot offset,
500
right?
foot offset,
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
So, can you state your motion again? Which
Scenario 2.
scenario 2? Okay.
I don't believe that those other parcels help anybody, and the cost for them to extend their lines is going to...
Okay. The question was, when the original line to go from 4th Street to roughly 11th Street, what was the original estimated cost per parcel before the project was extended to go north of 12th Street and beyond? Did you have...
I don't think we had that at that point.
You didn't have scenario costs for those? Okay. I just know if that's going to put the cost for the people south of 8th Street higher than what they're expecting or lower than what they were expecting.
I mean, we could find those costs out and we have to back into the paperwork, but we don't have that at this point.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Flesher, any discussion?
That is all.
Okay. Commissioner Davis?
I'm good.
Okay. We do have a motion on the floor. This is the 70-30 split, and this would result in 18 properties on either side of 66th Avenue that would be eligible to connect, and the cost per connection would be $13,637.29, in addition to the impact fee and the cost to hook up and run the line and such. So the assessment would be $13,637.29. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on the motion? Okay, Mr. Johnson?
And to the chair, as Mr. Johnson's walking up, I know Commissioner Solari made the motion. Who seconded that again?
Commissioner Fletcher.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Johnson, Carl. For the future, like we discussed, four different options. For the future, is the county commission, next time somebody has a request like this, they can say 100%. What's going to be the criteria for the future? Is it going to be 70-30 for everybody in the future as a rule of thumb, or how's that going to be determined?
This one's only got the 70-30 split because we're assuming there's a benefit to the system to be looped to other customers. Normally, all customers will have to pay 100%. This one we've derived there's a benefit to other customers. So in the future, it's been the policy, because it is an enterprise fund, to recoup 100% of the line costs for serving those customers.
But to answer your question, Bob, if this does happen anywhere else, it's probably going to be up north of State Road 60 on 66th Avenue just for another loop. And that will become more problematic because you've got more large acreage parcels there that you'll basically be having a 40-acre parcel, for example, a quarter-mile of frontage with nobody on the other side, perhaps, even willing to tap into it. So I don't know. I don't think we created one policy that's going to work forever today.
No.
I think this is a unique situation.
And it
won't be the last. I mean, we'll have more.
And if it ran to the canal and stopped, it would be 100%. It would have been 100% assessment type formula. But since it crossed over, it has the blend.
Okay, so we do have the motion from Commissioner Solari, second by Commissioner Fletcher. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye. Nay.
Okay. That motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Zork opposed. We'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break and call 11:10. We'll be back.
I understand.
From that point on, never coming back.
You can't ever get called up if you're not there. No, wait, she's coming by hand. Be able to get some. Well, the next set is the people beyond the 500. So they're going to 4th Street, 600 feet west of the line. And he's got. Yeah, that he's got. But they could do a private line from that point if they get property and cooperation for an easement to run that line. But he's on. I left my partner now back to the salt water line. A lot of these things are going to be out. It is. We're still a few bodies short. That's all right.
Gonna go with this?
All right.
We'll call the meeting back to order. Next is item 3 under utilities, evaluation of receiving TMDL credits for past projects, memorandum dated January 15, 2014. And Vinny, welcome again.
Welcome back. Thank you.
I saw that hesitation, Mr. Chairman. I think Vinny was hoping for a motion, but...
Actually hoping to talk about this a little bit. Thank you, Chairman. For the record, again, Utility Director Vincent. Back in August, staff brought to the board 2 phases. Phase 1 was to engage MBV to look at the feasibility of enticing or working with the FDEP, rather, poor choice of words, to look at receiving credits for all the good work that the county has done. Notably so, the DEP is a little bit hesitant, at least initially, to give us some form of letter recognizing the process to move forward. But with that being said, we, along with MBV, went down to the FDEP's office in the Southeast District in West Palm Beach. We're now reporting down to the West Palm Beach office. We met with staff, Linda Bryan and some of the other folks down there, kind of explained what we were trying to do, answered some of the questions that they have. Subsequent to that, we actually got on the phone on October 29th and again on November 22nd to talk with the DEP folks up in Tallahassee. But the most recent call we had was in November, where we had representatives from the Division of Environmental Assessment and Restoration, DEER, Division of Water Resource Management, DWRM, and St. John's on the phone to try to get a feel for what the county is doing. And this is in summary what the county has done. The county has, as you know, spent millions of dollars before my time and concurrently now with the Osprey Marsh project, which is scheduled to be completed later towards of 2014. But we have not been able to get some of the credits or the recognition, at least from the department side, for some of this work. We have our operational parameters that we have to comply with, not only at the RO plant, but at the regional wastewater treatment plant for TN and TP. But it is the former utilities director in my position that I think if we had some of these credits that were accountable, we probably would not have a consent order on our South County RO system. In other words, we're trying to get credit from the good work that the county has spent millions of dollars on to either bank or to offset some TN and TP issues at other places, such as West Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant. So phase 2 is to try to capture all that, is to do some permit modifications, which we need to do out at West Regional, to do some permit modifications down at the South County RO, and to do permit modifications at the North County RO that take into account the great projects such as Egret Marsh, such as the PC main right outside this building, such as the Osprey Marsh, in conjunction with our current operating permits as well. And as Commissioner Solari has pointed out, if we are required to, at least in some places, spend additional money to try to comply with TNTP reduction at, say, our West Regional plant, well, we can do those reductions at, say, Spoonbill Marsh, or with the pilot project that we recently are going after some additional grants for. If we can capture those net environmental benefits, on the other hand, we can then perhaps utilize and effectively spend our money wisely instead of spending money on some cost measures that may be quite expensive. So phase 2, again, we do have a letter from the DEP. It's a 2-page letter. It's included in your backup. They're requesting additional information. We wanted to have a buy-in from DEP before we came back to you for phase 2. There's a not-to-exceed number in here for MBV to work with staff to compile the information and to concurrently not wait for our permits to expire in 2016 like West Regional, but to do the permit modifications out at West Regional to upsize the 4 to 6 million gallon per day wetland system that is designed for so, and to also do the permit modifications at our 2 water plants that are consistent with the good work that the county has done in recognition of the net environmental benefit through the reduction of TNTP throughout some of the projects. And that's what phase 2 is here today for consideration.
Thank you. Vinny, any questions of Vinny?
Yeah,
Commissioner Solari?
If I could, I'd like to sort of restate it and let Vinny correct me where I'm wrong, because this is a little bit of a complex issue, but it's, I think, important. We'll just go, say, to the West Treatment Plant. If we wanted to expand a project there and had to remediate for, say, 10 pounds of nitrogen, if we, right now, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection would require that we remediate for those 10 pounds at the West Regional plant, which might cost us, say, $1,000 a pound, as opposed to making that remediation as part of a different project where the cost to remediate per pound might be $200. So the goal is in no way to try to reduce our total remediation. The goal is, with limited dollars, to try to get the most pounds of nitrogen removed. So that's how I understand it.
Right, and they're going to the same affected water body as well. So what we're trying to do is look at those different operations at different stages, whether or not it's at lateral D canal or whether or not it's out here.
But the point is, we're not trying to reduce the number of the amount of nitrogen we take out. We're just trying to reduce the most nitrogen we can at the lowest cost.
Yes.
And part of the problem here is that DEP tends to focus in on what it's always done, similar to the Spoonville Marsh. My understanding is that when Mr. Olson started the Spoonville Marsh, he was told that you're never going to be able to do this. But it turns out that the Utilities Department was able to walk that through, and we now have a very cutting-edge project which is doing good work for the environment. So,
2 other things that I just wanted to add to that is there's a Senate Bill 7113 that allows folks to look at doing credits inter-county or outside the county. This is not what we're interested in doing. We're not looking to do credits for trading for monetarily reasons. We're looking to do credits within the county where we have different systems, whether or not it's...
Is it going to cost as much to get that calculated?
And that's part of the process. Is this is something that's so new to the department that they're a little bit hesitant to try to say that we can go forward to do this. So they're asking for additional information. In fact, we're trying to go up to the state next week, and we're trying to play phone tag with the basin coordinator and the head of that program, Elizabeth Olvey, and we're trying to do that perhaps next week if possible, not only to respond to the questions that they have posed here, but to have a face-to-face meeting to, I think, broaden their understanding, but also show how we will tangibly record the efforts that we're trying to do in order to capture those.
Well, and that's as far as
those credits.
Selling these credits. I don't know that at this point I'm not wanting to keep that door open, guys. I mean, because there's going to be areas of up and down our lagoon that physically cannot do what we have the ability to do here locally, and if it will help our efforts to clean the lagoon, even if it's on other communities' behalf, I think that should be something we may want to consider.
Well, this is the first step in that direction.
Right.
So this is consistent with that.
Oh, I thought we were explicitly not doing that.
Well, I mean, at least initially we're looking at just for the credits.
That is not what we're doing at this point. We're not doing anything to work against that. But it's the type of thing we'll never get there if we can't get through this
initiating what we're...
Okay.
So,
I guess how I interpret this is DEP has given us a number. X pounds of nitrogen is our number to meet for loading. And if we can reach X by whatever means, then it doesn't matter if it comes from the wastewater treatment plant or wherever. As a matter of fact, probably we can meet our nitrogen reductions just from Commissioner Slurry's yard now, which is grass-free, and get credit for that, I think. And
well, as the other members of our community join me, I think that might be correct. But I wouldn't jump too far ahead at one time.
Let's keep working on oysters.
And right now, there's no mechanism for us to capture those credits, Commissioner. We don't have a way to tangibly capture those credits.
How you
That's
get
correct.
credit, right?
Yes.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, any further questions? Or
Happy to move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Slurry, second from Commissioner Davis. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
No, just one question.
Motion passes unanimously.
Do you have to flip the rocks every 6 months so they get appropriate shade and don't grow mold under them?
You know, I actually have to point this out. Commissioner O'Brien suggested that I not focus too much on the rocks. There are actually other things in the garden aside from rocks.
Really?
So, yeah, okay. There are actually some other plants. So I'm happy to report that, first, I don't have to break my back by flipping the rocks, and second, there are a lot of other things besides rocks in the garden.
Okay. That's those scent-smelling things that smell like cut grass that you have around your house.
Little feng shui.
A little bit of pine salt where it smells like a forest.
Right.
I'm going to take one step further.
Actually, truth be told, Commissioner Slurry in the middle of the night stinks over his neighbor's house after he...
It rolls around in the grass.
After he cut the grass, and he rolls around in it and comes back...
It's kind of like beef. That's what
Actually,
vegetarians
Commissioner
eat when they cheat,
Commissioner Solari's on Vero Beach Electric. I don't think he would be looking to plug in any additional devices. He's trying to remove his dependency from paying those overburdensome prices.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the benefits of going to the turfless yard is that I didn't have to replace my electric lawnmower, and the savings to my high-priced electricity is already showing up in the bill, so it's another plus.
Okay. All righty. Under County Attorney Matters, we did pull item 13A, so we'll proceed to item 13B, the Save the Indian River Lagoon Estuary Now, Inc. Government and the Sunshine Law issue. Mr. Reingold.
Thank you, Chair. To the Chair and to the full Commission, I know at our January 7th meeting, the Board of County Commissioners had requested that the County Attorney's Office look into the issue of whether Sterling, which is Save the Indian River Lagoon Estuary Now, Inc., was subject to the Government and the Sunshine Law Act. After that meeting, I met with Commissioner Zork and with Scott Stradley to discuss the governance issue, the corporate structure and governance and procedural issues and operations issues associated with Sterling. Some of the key facts that came up was that Commissioner Zork and Mr. Stradley had formed the organization, and then a third individual had joined on, and the three of them are the board of directors for that corporation. They have hired a consultant who will be assisting them in having workshops conducted with various stakeholders and contributors, which are scientific and non-scientific based interest holders. Once those workshops are concluded, the consultant will be preparing a report and of recommendations that will be provided to the Board of Directors for their approval and then presented to the Board of County Commissioners, but not just this Board of County Commissioners, but other boards, city councils, state and local, state and federal governments, and other interested parties. Based upon those facts, I went out and I did some research, and I also contacted an individual at the Attorney General's office, Mr. Legrand Saunders, and based upon that, we had determined that it was not subject to the Government and the Sunshine Law. Essentially, private entities are not generally subject to the Government and the Sunshine Law unless three things are met. One is that they are either formed by the public entity. Two, if they are serving a governmental function on behalf of the governmental body. Or three, that they are essentially stepping into the shoes of and becoming an integral part of the decision-making process. We found in our discussions that none of those factors were met here. It was clearly not established by the Board of County Commissioners. It's not established or required to be established per any state statute or local ordinance. Second, they're not actually doing anything on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners. In fact, at the board meeting, our board meeting in July 16th, the Sterling Group came forward and just presented their general outline as to how the workshops would be conducted. And I believe I made a statement at that meeting making it very clear that they have not been delegated any authority and that they can present recommendations back to this board and any board just like any other nonprofit corporation can, and that this board has not essentially delegated to them any authority to act on its behalf. And based upon those issues and facts and my conversations with the Attorney General's office and informal conversations, is that the Sterling organization was not subject to the government and the Sunshine Law. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair or to the commission for questions.
Thank you. Dylan, any questions of Dylan?
I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Dylan for his report.
Yeah, Dylan, very thorough follow-up. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you ever get to the bottom of yours?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to make an announcement. Thank you. Are we concluded with this? So before we finish up with the county attorney matters, earlier this morning under public discussion items, Althea McKenzie had made a comment attributing a somewhat negative comment towards her that she attributed to coming from a member of the county attorney's office. Under further investigation, I'd just like to say that the comment in no way originated with anyone associated with the county attorney's office or the county in general. The comment was initiated by the Scripps T.C. Palm reporter. Mrs. McKenzie has apologized, apparently, and acknowledged there was a miscommunication there. So I'd just like to clarify that no one in the county's attorney's office or the county had made any type of derogatory comment. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and proceed to commissioner items. And Commissioner Flesher, an item on the Department of Juvenile Justice's Our Children, Our Future, and Community Conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, this is just by way of information. The Secretary of the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice is visiting Indian River County. Secretary Winsley Walters will be here at the Indian River County Sheriff's Office on Friday, January 24th. That's this Friday. Between 9 a.m. to 10:30. It's a brief visit. We're thankful that the sheriff is going to host the meeting in the Indian River County Sheriff's Office auditorium at 4055 41st Avenue in Vero Beach. And again, Secretary Winsley Walters wanted to visit Indian River County as she is visiting many jurisdictions in the Treasure Coast. She's eager to hear from the community. She would like to have a community conversation to provide an open dialogue with the public on what the Division of Juvenile Justice staff can do, what they can do better, what resources, what needs in the community that are geared or being discussed towards juvenile justice and diversionary plans. And she just wants to have an open dialogue. It's more or less a brief presentation, and she's hoping to get some serious input from the citizens. And I advise that standing on the Juvenile Justice Board, as well as having been noticed, I felt that the community oftentimes would say, you know, we can do for the juveniles, you know, we hear it, but the Secretary would like to hear it, and this is a great opportunity. Again, Friday, January 24th, 9 a.m. through 10:30 a.m. at the Indian River County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next, we added the item 14E under Commissioner Tim Zork, the electric issues with the City of Vero Beach. Commissioner Zork.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'd like to ask for today is the drafting of a resolution addressed to Speaker Weatherford in Tallahassee, encouraging to hold hearings on Representative Mayfield's bills relating to the outside customers that she has filed. The bill should be out of drafting and assigned a bill number. Probably by the time we get out today, it should already be posted in draft form with a number on it. But I think just to make sure that the Speaker knows the level of importance of this issue to the county, and that he holds the appropriate hearings that would go along with that, the bill that Representative Mayfield has. That's part one. Part two, in a second letter, I think more in a letter than a resolution form on the second one, would be that if Speaker Weatherford reaches out to the city of Vero Beach to talk about this issue prior to a hearing or invite somebody to participate in a hearing relating to the bill, that we would also encourage the Speaker to include and invite representatives from Indian River Shores as well as maybe a member of one of us to participate in that, explaining the importance of when 60% of the customers are outside and have no representation, the importance that Representative Mayfield's bill moves forward. So one would be a resolution that we would then share with our lobbying group in Tallahassee at Ballard and any other person that could help make sure that the Speaker holds hearings on Representative Mayfield's bill. And then second, the request in a letter form advising Speaker Weatherford if he has any desire to meet or have anybody present at these hearings, to the invitation to include representatives from Indian River Shores and the County Commission. I'm sure that obviously they would invite somebody from the city, so I'm not too worried about them inviting them, but we'd like to make sure we're at the table to present our side for the outside customers in a hearing forum or whatever fact-finding the Speaker may take.
And Mr. Zork, could we sort of change just a little bit of that? You mentioned that we share it with the consultants. Mm-hmm. We also asked that county attorney to actually get the consultants' input.
Sure, good point. Good
so
point.
That they can, whatever they feel would help them as they lobby for us, that
that's
they
right.
can incorporate that.
Yes.
So with that, if that was in the form of a motion, I'd be happy to second it.
Great, thank you.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Zork, seconded by Commissioner Slurry to, I assume that's the county attorney's office.
To draft a
resolution and a letter to Speaker Weatherford regarding Representative Mayfield's bill.
I take it the letter was for the chairman's signature.
Yes.
And the letter would have the chairman's signature. And also consult with our Ballard and their input on the wording of both of those.
Sure, great, thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Engel.
Just clarification on the motion. Would you like this to be presented back to the board at the February 4th meeting, or simply just go out and draft the resolution and the letter and move it from there?
I think we would like to have it come back. If it is a resolution, usually that includes the formal vote and things like that.
You're getting pretty late in the process.
Yeah, that's the only, committee hearings are going to be discussions scheduled on a very near-term basis. Can we do it two ways? One, if there's time to draft it and present it and have a safe window of opportunity by the next meeting, we'll go to the next meeting. If the people at Ballard say no, it would really be more beneficial to have it next Monday or some date earlier that's prior to our next meeting, to have the ability to, I'm just trying to look at a calendar.
We don't have a meeting next week. So
right.
Now we are now dangerously close there. Council would be possible if the chair can review the final product and approve at that point. I think that we all have a consensus here. It sounds like we're all going in the same direction. If we can just relay it back to the chair to do a final sign-off, and I think that would be most appropriate. We're in the spirit of time right now.
Yep, and that's why I presented that issue, because in the past you've asked me to bring back resolutions for approval, but because of the timing, I'll be happy, based upon that, to draft the resolution and get a final and the letter out, working with the chair to get that completed.
I think the intent of the resolution is crystal clear
and time sensitive,
and most apparent and time sensitive, and if we could, I would yield that option of review back to entrusted counsel and the chair as one county commissioner.
And I'll just add to it, if the chairman sees any problem with the resolution, he can withhold it until there's a vote. But I'd give that to the chairman at his discretion.
Okay. Dylan, are you good?
No, I appreciate that guidance, because, like I said, in the past I've brought things back to the board, but because of the time-sensitive manner, I'm glad we discussed that part of the issue.
I'll see if the bill number's out after lunch, and I'll check and see if it's
just as an aside, are you feeling resistance on this from the leadership? Is that what this is?
Well, it's unknown, not sure which way they want to go, so it would be just something that provides an additional bit of information and push to let them know that this is very important to us. I'm planning on going to Friday to Indian River Shores just to ask them, say they might want to do something similar at the same time, and I think if the Speaker's office gets 2 resolutions from representative government in the area, that should clear up any uncertainty if he's deciding not to have it.
Yeah, I'm assuming, though, that they're not, that his seat doesn't totally lie inside a municipality's electric business.
Right. Well, that's...
So where's he from?
Glenn, can you shed any light on that, if I can ask him to come up, or do you... I know parts of him, but I don't know that particular part. But that's a good point.
Kind of a funny sounding name, I think.
Tallahassee?
No.
That's weird. Okay.
Sorry, Tim. Great idea, by the way. I love this idea. But Weatherford, I have no idea. I have no idea where it's from.
I'll Google it right now.
Yeah, why don't you...
While he's doing that, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Slory?
given how fast Dylan works, it might help Commissioner Zork's meeting at the Shores if he can get that resolution done in a day or so, pass it over to the Shores and ask them to have copies of our resolution when they meet. And that way, he may suggest that they just copy our resolution and get it off also in a fast, timely manner.
If we knew the bill number, we could just do authorize and do a resolution supporting that bill by...
Right. Yeah, we should know at 12 they're supposed to be out with the numbers on them. So
yeah, and I think Dylan could probably, and Dylan's the attorney, probably do that the Board of County Commissioners would like you to support bill such and such done by Representative Mayfield, and he could draft that resolution if you voted for it that way. I think it's a pretty standard resolution.
Right. The only thing we just don't know is its assigned number. But they said by 12 it was supposed to be out with a number on it. So that's, if we ran a little bit longer, I was going to call during a lunch break. But since we're finishing before 12, there's no sense in calling yet.
Oh, could you repeat that just for Commissioner Slory's benefit, please? That we are finishing before 12?
Oh.
Yeah, with the agenda this short, I should hope so. All right, so gentlemen, we have a motion from Commissioner Zork, second by Commissioner Slory, to adopt a resolution to Speaker Weatherford supporting Representative Mayfield's bill, which we will plug in the bill number when that becomes available, and secondly, to approve a letter to Speaker Weatherford that if additional information is needed, that the county and the Indian River Shores and City of Vero Beach would be glad to meet on said item.
And information or to attend any hearings that he may call.
Yes.
Just to include that.
To the chair and following up on what Mr. Baird had said, I think that what I'd heard about the resolution was kind of twofold. One, we support Debbie Mayfield's bill, but two, we encourage you to host workshops.
To let it proceed to committee.
Right.
Yeah, let it go to committee and conduct whatever workshops are necessary. And so that'll be essentially Section 1 and Section 2 of that resolution.
Okay.
And then under all that, Dylan, just coordinate with the lobbyist and try to have something available for the Town of Indian River Shores meeting by Friday.
Land O'Lakes.
Land O'Lakes. There you go.
Is that right, Glenn, of FMPA?
Pasco County.
Yeah. Is that out west? That's out west, right? Land O'Lakes is out west?
Yeah.
North of Tampa.
North of Tampa.
And what city? What are the major cities in there?
Land O'Lakes, Dade City is the county seat of Pasco County. You're north of Polk County.
It's where the big nuclear reactor's got the crack in it that belongs to Progress.
Yeah, I think it is.
Is it really?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're probably good.
I'm not thinking there's any munis there. They might have co-ops over there. That might be what's bigger. But I can't think of any cities that are. You haven't mentioned any one that are members of the FMPA, which is really the issue.
Would you like to filibuster, Commissioner?
We have about 22 minutes left, and
well, I think we're clear on the motion here.
Okay.
So
No.
We will proceed to vote. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? That motion carries.
100% of the audience spoke.
Side note, I will be at FMPA Thursday, and at the following meeting I'll bring a little update if it hasn't covered prior in some other arrangement to bring up to speed what all happens on this Thursday.
Mr. Chairman?
Reimburse for your travel on that?
I don't think so.
You should.
You should, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead and put that
You guys
in.
could approve. You could approve his travel if you want.
Yeah, if you were to get hurt while driving there,
Oh, that's a point.
you need to get that checked out.
What did you say, Joe?
The Board of County Commissioners could, if Commissioner, all you need to do is say you approve Commissioner Zork's travel to FPMA, and then it's covered.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, well, actually, for the purpose of the minutes, under Commissioner Davis's items, we added an item to approve Commissioner Zork's travel to the FMA meetings. That was a motion by Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Slaughter. Any discussion? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carried unanimously. Okay. Gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman?
Dylan?
To the Chair, I just want to briefly thank you for clearing up the issue that was raised earlier.
Not a problem. And I really, one quick thing. I think I sent you all the email, but remember our last meeting, the St. John's came about the water supply issue and the lack of a public hearing. We did receive notice from Ann Benedetti that they are going to schedule a public hearing here in the county chambers on Monday, February 10th. And so our good work paid off there. We will have, I think it's either 5 or 5:30, but I'll bring this up first meeting in like what Commissioner Fletcher did today, so the public can know.
And is there a...
You want us to post that big on our website?
Absolutely. Since we went through all the trouble kind of complaining we wanted a public hearing, I think we should get as much as a public hearing as we can. Absolutely. Yeah.
And if we have a way of sharing that with Okeechobee too, since that northwest corner of Okeechobee is covered in their plan, to let them know that meeting opportunity will be closer for them if somebody wants to attend?
I guess so. No.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Great.
Mr. Chairman? Did you want to point out anything about tomorrow's workshop?
Oh, impact fee?
We're having a workshop tomorrow, Mr. Chairman?
I think
I know it's been advertised, but I just want to remind the public that tomorrow that's 1 p.m.? 1:30. And it'll be right here in the chambers, impact fee workshop. Thank you.
Okay.
And I think, did Mr. Herron have one more question or comment?
Yeah, I'll just ask you real quick. Does anybody know what county Lakeland's in?
Lakeland's Polk County.
Polk. So this is not the same.
No.
Okay. Yeah. This guy's got nobody. This guy's got nobody in that.
Okay.
TICO is about the closest thing you're going to get. They probably got co-ops, but co-ops don't apply to this issue. So we're good.
Okay. Great. Gentlemen, with that, we stand adjourned.